Even then, Trump has had to be forced, kicking and screaming, to comply. Unfortunately, most SNAP recipients will only receive about 50% of their benefits, and it could take weeks for them to receive because of Trump's delays. This means that over 40 million Americans on SNAP will not receive their full benefits as long as the government remains closed. Americans deserve more than just 50% of their benefits. In my district in Los Angeles, over 120,000 people rely on SNAP. We call it CalFresh in California. I've spoken with food bank workers, and they are worried about running out of food to give out. My constituents who depend on SNAP say that they use the benefits to buy healthy fruits and vegetables, and that they would otherwise be too expensive. Instead of negotiating with Democrats to reopen the government and lower cost, Donald Trump and Republicans are holding the country hostage, putting kids and seniors and veterans at the risk of going hungry and without access to health care. Republicans promised to lower cost. Instead, they will let health care premiums skyrocket, and grocery prices have continued to rise. House Democrats are ready to act, to reopen the government and restore the services Americans need to survive. We need President Trump and Speaker Johnson to sit down with House Democrats so we can negotiate a bipartisan solution that reopens the government and lowers cost. And with that, I will now turn it over and introduce the chair of the Democratic Caucus, Pete Aguilar.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Co-Chair Bedigan, the Steering Policy Committee, Co-Chair Wasserman Schultz as well, who just arrived. I'm grateful to be here with my House Democratic colleagues and our witnesses as we continue to drive home the importance of finding a bipartisan deal that reopens the government, fixes the health care crisis that Republicans have created, and feeds hungry children and families. Today, it's my honor to introduce Attorney General Rob Bonta from my state of California, from our state of California. After an incredible victory in California on Tuesday to fight back against Donald Trump's attempts to rig the 2026 midterm elections, AG Bonta is here to share an update on how he's also fighting back against Donald Trump's attacks on health care and SNAP. I've had the privilege of working with Mr. Bonta, and I know firsthand his commitment to ensuring that Californians and Americans across the country have access to quality, affordable health care and food assistance that they need to survive. In California, AG Bonta is leading the way to preserve federal funding for critical programs that hardworking families rely on in their daily lives. This work is more important than ever, with the Trump administration continuing to double down on their agenda to cut health care and food assistance programs in order to free up money for their corporate tax cuts. AG Bonta, thank you so much for being here. You're now recognized.
Working? Good morning. Thank you, Chair Aguilar, for that kind introduction. Thank you, Co-Chair Bedigan, for your leadership. I want to thank Leader Jeffries for inviting me. Thank you to all of you for your leadership, Congress members, to our nation, and to the people of the great state of California. I'm honored for the opportunity to be here to talk a little bit about our work at the California DOJ, holding this president accountable when he breaks the law, which unfortunately has been frequent, it's been consistent, it's been blatant, and it has been brazen. I'll do a quick overview and then get into our SNAP work. We have sued the president and his administration 46 times in 41 weeks. We had no intention and we have no desire to sue him at all, certainly not once a week, but we sue him when he breaks the law. That's our position. If he breaks the law, we sue. If he doesn't break the law, we don't sue. And so he's broken the law more than once a week in ways that have hurt our states. And the Democratic Attorneys General have banded together. We work as a coalition, 23 of us across the nation, holding this administration accountable when he tries to withhold $3 trillion worth of funding from our states that you, Congress, have already appropriated, when he tries to violate and trample over rights and freedoms like birthright citizenship, like the right to vote, when he tries to access the private sensitive information of your constituents, bank account information and Social Security information through DOJ, when he imposes unlawful tariffs that make costs higher for Americans instead of lower. We have also pushed back when National Guard has been unlawfully deployed to our cities, militarizing cities and providing civilian law enforcement on American soil. So there's, unfortunately, a tragically long list of violations of lawlessness. This is a president who is a repeat offender, who has violated the law multiple times. I want to tell you, we are winning our cases over 80% of the time. When a court issues an order, a temporary restraining order, a preliminary injunction, a permanent injunction, and more because we're advancing our cases downfield with the passage of time, we are winning final judgments in cases. And courts are finding that Trump has broken the law. They're issuing orders stopping and blocking the unlawful actions that are hurting Americans. And we're grateful for the opportunity to meet him in court, to hold the line at the boundary of his authority and say, you cannot cross this line. You can do things lawfully, you can advance your agenda lawfully, but you may never advance your agenda unlawfully. And I also want you to know this, in all of our cases, he is following the court orders. There was one case where we had to move to enforce the court order, but the courts, their authority is alive and well, their orders are being followed, they're being complied with. Courts remain a place where you can go get justice and accountability and stop an unlawful president from hurting Americans with his unlawful actions. I do want to also mention this. Not one Republican attorney general has brought any lawsuit challenging the unlawful actions, the unconstitutional actions of this president. They have bent the knee. They have been craven. They have been cowardly. They have been supine. They have allowed the president to do what he wants when he wants, including ripping away funding from the people in their states, trampling over the rights and freedoms of the people in their states. They have stood by and done nothing. And they have also, that includes standing by while SNAP benefits get ripped away from the people in their states. And as you know, SNAP is an entitlement program. The statutory framework uses the word shall. The payments shall be made to any eligible American. And in the history of our country, SNAP has always been paid to those who are eligible, including in times of government shutdown, including the 2019 Trump government shutdown. It is an entitlement program that is obviously a safety net service. These are people who are disabled. They are veterans. They are seniors. They are children. They deserve their government to look out for them and stand up for them and make sure that when they're hungry, they are fed. That's who we are as a nation. Trump deliberately, by choice, intentionally, went out of his way to rip away over $5 billion of funding for over 41 million Americans who are hungry. They gaslighted the American people by saying, quote, the well is dry, when the contingency fund for SNAP that is supposed to be used in times like this, at times of a government shutdown, was full of $5 billion to $6 billion worth of funding. And they refused to pay benefits to hungry Americans until the Democratic attorneys general and others, there's a separate lawsuit as well, brought lawsuits that required him, the Trump administration and USDA, to make the payments. We had to go to court and get a court order that ordered the Trump administration, the USDA, to use those contingency funds. The court also allowed the Trump administration to determine if they were going to use other funds to pay all benefits, which would have been a very appropriate thing for the Trump administration to do, given that this is an entitlement benefit. They decided not to. They decided to only use the contingency funds and make partial payments to those who are eligible across the states. That's a problem. Why? Because it is an administrative nightmare. It creates a delay. People are already not getting their benefits since the beginning of this month. It will take multiple weeks for these partial payments to be processed, for EBT cards to be loaded, and for hungry Americans to be able to get the food that they need and they deserve. Trump could have either paid all of the benefits or had a clean approach to how to make partial payments, including just a straight across-the-board percentage, which could be processed and administratively applied more easily. So we're in a place where the Trump administration seems to be saying, I will starve hungry Americans until you allow me to rip away affordable health care from sick Americans. And he is treating hungry Americans, our most vulnerable, as political pawns in a very dangerous game. It's harmful, it's disgusting, it's dangerous, and we're not going to stand for it. So we've gone to court once again to hold this administration accountable. We will continue to be committed to upholding the rule of law, making sure we protect the health, safety of our of Americans. And I just want to say that as hungry Americans continue to be without the benefits that they deserve, we have a president who is more focused seemingly on his $300 million gold-plated ballroom, has been jet-setting overseas, and has not been attending to the needs of Americans. But the Democratic AGs and all of you are, they deserve leaders who will fight for them, who will stand up for them, who will be their champion, who will make sure that the hungry get fed and the sick have health care. So I thank you for your leadership. I'm honored to be here with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. We are so grateful not only for your comments today, but truly for your leadership. We were admonished by Speaker Mike Johnson this week to don't get lost in the facts. And we appreciate that you are setting forth the facts and the very real, cruel choice. This using hunger as a political weapon is a choice, and we thank you for your work. I'm also grateful to our steering and policy co-chairs, to my fellow members of leadership, and especially to my colleagues for being here. But it is you, the witnesses, that we are really, really grateful for helping us demonstrate just how much is at stake in this fight. And I am especially grateful for our next speaker, who can shine a light on what it means to be a mom in America right now. And we have a White House that really can't stop talking about birth rates in our country. Republicans who cannot for the life of them figure out why women aren't having more babies, while they gut Medicaid, close hospitals, dismantle Head Start, and take food off the table of families. Working women do not have the resources to become a mother, let alone be a mother. 35% of the counties in America don't have anywhere to give birth. Most Americans live in a child care desert. 60% of households can't afford a basic standard of living. And Republicans expect those families to give up more, to sacrifice more so that billionaires can get more. It is as hollow an agenda as it sounds, and it explains the backlash that we saw at the polls on Tuesday. We know where the American people stand, and Democrats are going to keep fighting for an economy where you can actually start, raise, and sustain a family. In the richest country to ever exist, that should not be too much to ask. So I thank everyone here for being in this fight to build that future. And our next speaker is the proud mom of 3, the founder and CEO of the Baby Stewart Foundation, Ashley Gooden Stewart. Ashley, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your work and advocacy, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My name is Ashley Gooden Stewart. I live in Lamarck, Texas, with my partner, our 3 young kids, ages 1, 6, and 8. I'm a certified grief coach, nonprofit founder, and a proud member of Moms Rising. I appreciate the opportunity to share my story today and all you and everything everyone is doing to fight for working families. I appreciate that. My family has struggled to make ends meet as the cost of essentials has risen dramatically, and our child care crisis has prevented me from working full time. The support Medicaid and WIC provide is critical for us, as it is for millions of other families. But now, this administration is refusing to fund these programs, putting our health and well-being at risk. I first joined Moms Rising because of my struggles as a working mom. In my experience, our economy is not set up to support working mothers. Here in the United States, working parents are forced to care for our families without the basic care policies people in other developed nations take for granted, like paid family and medical leave and quality, affordable child care. When my son was born in 2019, I was laid off from my job at a health insurance company where I'd worked for 3.5 years. Since then, I've struggled to maintain consistent employment because childcare is not affordable or accessible. Where I live, childcare programs cost hundreds of dollars per week, and most have long wait lists. The best solution for me was to do contract work, but that is seasonal, spotty, and unreliable. Sometimes my mom helps with childcare so I can take on more hours, but she is a veteran with a disability and has limitations on what she can do. It's been a real struggle. Without my full-time income, my family has struggled to keep up with rising costs. As I said, WIC and Medicaid are critical for us. WIC helps me keep healthy food on the table that my kids need to grow and thrive. Eggs are expensive. Milk is expensive. Fresh produce is expensive. These days, it feels like everything in life is expensive. WIC helps fill in the gaps. The breastfeeding classes WIC provides are incredible, as are the classes on child development milestones and cooking healthy meals. Although I've been a mother for years, every child is different, and these resources are extremely helpful. But for so many families like mine, the government shutdown is causing an enormous amount of stress because WIC and SNAP are running out of funds, and this administration is refusing to use the contingency funds Congress approved to protect them. My family has also received SNAP benefits, and although we recently lost access, so many of the families in my community that I support through my nonprofit organization depend on the support SNAP provides. I was relieved when I saw this weekend that a judge ordered Trump to release SNAP funds, but I've also heard that families may only get partial SNAP benefits this month. That will be terribly harmful for families in my community and across the country. I'm also terrified because this summer, Republicans in Congress voted to slash nearly $1 trillion from Medicaid. Medicaid is a lifeline for us. It's the reason I had access to quality prenatal and postpartum care when each of my children were born. Medicaid enables us to take our kids to the doctor when they're sick and for all their routine checkups. My older daughter has asthma and severe allergies, and Medicaid helps us afford the medications and specialists she needs to stay healthy. I have no idea how we'll access care without it. It's devastating to me that any lawmaker would attack programs that would help working families like mine access health care while doling out big tax breaks for billionaires and giant corporations. The thought that any lawmaker prioritizes a billionaire's greed over my daughter's access to her asthma medication makes my stomach churn. I want to thank the members of this committee for fighting to protect Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. The cost of health care has skyrocketed, and these policies are more critical than ever. We need every single elected leader to sort out their priorities. That starts with funding Medicaid and the ACA, reopening the government, ensuring that there is no interruption to WIC and SNAP, and getting to work on the pressing issues that are holding families like mine back, including solving our child care crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Dean, you're now recognized.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Is this on? Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. I'm pleased to be here, but I'm not pleased for the many reasons we are here, the dysfunction that brings us here. But I am proud to be here with the steering and policy leadership. Thank you for calling us all together. And you see here on the dais also our caucus leadership. Take note, Democrats are here. Democrats have been here, wanting to solve the problems of the American people, some of which are so self-inflicted by this administration, it is unconscionable. We are here. The Speaker of the House shot us all home September the 19th. So while we talk about, what are we up to, a 37-day shutdown, something like that, add 11 days to that. because we left 11 days early under the gavel of the Speaker of the House, knowing that a shutdown was coming, knowing that SNAP benefits were at risk. So I'm pleased to be here with you in this leadership, pleased to be here with these testifiers. I have the awesome privilege of introducing a constituent of mine, Miss Lisa Boone Bogacki. I won't tell her story because I want you to tell your story. It's an important story. It's a unique story. It's a human story, but it is, you are not alone, and I know you know that. My district spans Montgomery and Berks counties outside of Philadelphia, and it's important to note that it's a wide range of very diverse families who are impacted by the dysfunction and shamefulness of what's going on here under the Trump administration and Republican leadership. This policy committee is shining a light on health care and on SNAP. People are living in fear that come the new year, they won't have access to care. They won't be able to afford care. In my district alone, suburban Philadelphia, as many as 28,000 people are at risk of losing their coverage. At least 22,000 will see their premiums skyrocket, thanks to the cruelty of this administration and the complacency of the Republican leadership and the silence of the others. The big ugly law made devastating cuts to Medicaid and to SNAP. And while we're talking about the SNAP crisis right now from the drying up of resources, let us not forget that under the big ugly bill, the administration and the Republicans took $186 billion to SNAP. This is all in furtherance of what is in Project 2025, which is to dismantle and to defund SNAP. In my district alone, a family of four for health care earning $64,000 a year will see a 300+% increase in their premiums. That's thousands and thousands of dollars increased. And who is it? It's working families, it's children, it's single parents, it's seniors, it's veterans, it's people with disabilities, it is people in recovery at risk of losing Medicaid and coverage. Our neighbors' health, well-being, and dignity are on the line. And so if you hear a tone in my voice that says I'm outraged, I am outraged. We are all outraged on behalf of the American people. A lot of things go on in the chamber, but for the chamber to have fallen silent for these last 6 or 7 weeks is unconscionable. That's why it is critical that we hear from people who are directly affected to paint the picture of what is being lost, of the humanity that is being impacted. So that's why I'm grateful to you, Lisa, from Fleetwood in my district. Fleetwood is in Berks County, Pennsylvania. Lisa, I ask you and thank you for being willing to come here for the inconvenience of that, to tell the story of how your family relies upon the Affordable Care Act. And I do want to remind you, we are thankful to you for telling your story, but we know you are not alone. As I discussed this with my district team yesterday, person after person on the call said, and Lisa represents so many of our constituents. With that, Lisa, the floor is yours.
I think it's on. Okay. Hello, and thank you, Representative Dean, for that introduction and for allowing me to speak before you today. As said, my name is Lisa Bogacki, and I live in Fleetwood, Pennsylvania. My family has relied on the Affordable Care Act for over a decade. If Republicans get their way, next year our premiums will quadruple and our deductibles will skyrocket. Healthcare first became a major challenge for my family in 2009 when my husband died suddenly, leaving me to raise our 3 young children on my own. I'm a self-employed physical therapist, and before my husband died, our family was covered by his employer's health plan. Following his death, I was forced onto the private health insurance market, which is entirely broken. Before the ACA, the health insurance company I was paying exorbitant monthly fees to deemed me too high risk for coverage due to diagnoses of situational depression due to my husband's sudden death, mild asthma, and seasonal allergies. As I was ineligible for the coverage, they made my then 4-year-old son the primary subscriber and responsible party for the family plan. All correspondence, including the bills, came addressed to him. I was never given a reason for this, despite many phone calls asking and pleading for it to change. So at one point I resorted to giving my son the forms they insisted on sending him to color on, and I sent them back. Our healthcare providers, the pediatricians for my children, were simply astounded, their chins hitting the floor. They couldn't even believe this was happening. But aside from the miracle of eliminating the pre-existing condition horrors, the ACA has helped my family tremendously. Prior to it, I was paying over $1,000 per month in premiums, and that was 15 years ago. The Social Security survivors benefits my children received following their father's death went primarily towards paying for health care. Now, Republicans are sabotaging the ACA. Next year, my monthly premiums will quadruple, and my deductibles will skyrocket. The plan I am able to afford will now have deductibles of $8,450 per individual and $16,900 for family, which is now my youngest son, who is 19 and a college student, and myself. This makes my coverage essentially catastrophic coverage, as without an unfortunate major health event, these deductibles will never be reached. As the only wealthy country without guaranteed health care, we should, at the very least, be working toward making health care more accessible and affordable to all of our citizens. Letting subsidies expire and cutting essential programs like Medicaid and Medicare can literally be a difference of life and death to many. As a healthcare worker for my entire career of close to 40 years, I cannot comprehend the thought of going without insurance. Yet I am already forgoing certain medical care that is not covered by my bronze level health plan, choosing instead to try to wait another 5 years until I'm eligible for Medicare. We cannot pretend to be a great country when we allow citizens to languish without full medical coverage, unless you happen to be lucky enough to be able to afford it. Thank you to all of you for hearing me and for continuing to do the work that is so needed in these times. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Representative Ivey, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the Steering and Policy Committee for putting this hearing together. I appreciate the fact our leadership is here with Catherine Clark, Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar. And I want to thank all of you all, the witnesses so far. Very powerful testimony for your statements here today that I think really helped to shed light on where we are. I see Mr. DeMarco is here, someone I've known for decades who's been working on these issues and really making a great difference. So I'm pleased to see you here today. And it's critical for us. We're in a major fight right now. There's an affordability agenda that the Democrats continue to push. Healthcare is at the center of it. And, the testimony you've given so far, I think, really underscores why. And I want to make sure we sort of point out and reemphasize the point that I've been seeing happening here for a while. The Republican attack on Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, but I prefer to call it Obamacare. That's been going on for 15 years now, and they realized they couldn't take it out with a frontal assault. So now it looks like they're trying to go after it with death by 1,000 cuts. And when we hear what kind of impact the premium jumps are going to have, I think that really underscores the danger and the impact that can have on the American people, millions of American people. We got Bobby Laughlin here today, who I think is going to add to this as well. He's an outstanding individual. He's personally experienced the life-changing impact of some of these federal health care policies and what they can do. And I know he's been a great voice in Maryland as well. On behalf of the Maryland delegation, I'd like to introduce Mr. Laughlin for his testimony. and thank him for coming in today to provide it.
For allowing me to speak today. My name is Bobby Laughlin. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, work in both the restaurant and HVAC industries. Neither of my jobs provide me with an insurance plan. I buy my insurance through my state's marketplace. The federal health care tax credits have been a lifeline for millions of Americans like myself who struggle to afford quality health insurance. They have lowered my monthly premiums significantly, reduced my deductible by thousands of dollars, and improved my access to health care greatly. Previously, I was paying for a higher cost plan that did not give me much coverage. I had a high deductible and was paying hundreds of dollars for visits to specialists. If I had needed to go to the emergency room or needed other expensive treatment, I would have been put into thousands of dollars of debt. Most importantly, because I have a better plan now, I have had access to preventative care for elevated cholesterol, which would have otherwise gone unnoticed. I live a much healthier and financially secure life because I have quality, affordable health care. Millions of Americans like me need the federal tax credits to be continued. Easy access to affordable health care has made it possible for Americans to stay healthy and productive without fear of financial ruin from expensive medical bills. This law is not only important for the health and well-being of tax credit recipients, but it has significant economic benefits for the country as a whole. By providing affordable health care to Americans, we can help to reduce the overall cost of health care nationally. This will lead to a healthier workforce, reduce absenteeism, and increase productivity. With the rising costs of living, a slowing job market, and an uncertain economic outlook, it is more important than ever for this nation to take decisive action to ensure that those who need the health care can afford it. Without accessible and affordable coverage, millions of Americans risk falling into crippling debt, suffering from preventable and debilitating health conditions, and even losing their lives. Protecting access to health care is not only a moral imperative, it is essential to the long-term health productivity and stability of our communities. If the federal tax credits end, health care will become a major expense for me. My premiums will more than double, and I will be forced to downgrade my plan to something that will barely cover my needs or give up my insurance entirely. I will be put into a situation where if I am seriously injured or am struck by chronic illness, I will be bankrupted by medical debt. This will not only affect me, but millions of Americans who do not receive health care from their employer. Families, children, and small business owners and contract workers will all be less healthy and financially burdened. This will have a net negative effect across the country, and I pray that these credits can be extended and save millions of Americans from suffering and harm. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you to our witnesses for your testimony. We will now turn to member questions, and we will begin with Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you so much to my fellow co-chair, Attorney General Bonta. Welcome. Thank you so much for your fierce advocacy. It is really incredulous that not a single Republican Attorney General in the country has filed a lawsuit to fight back on the completely illegal actions throughout this first 10 months of the Trump presidency. And that's in spite of the fact that his actions are really seriously hurting their own constituents. But the MAGA cult is real, so and it's on full display. On the SNAP, on the two SNAP court decisions, the insane back and forth from the president and his staff, where are we now? I mean, you represent, the largest state in the country, and obviously millions of SNAP beneficiaries. We have 42 million SNAP beneficiaries in the country. Where are we with the potential payout, and what's your sense of the timeline, if there is even a plan that's been communicated to you?
Sure, and let me just mention that while no Republican Attorney General has brought any lawsuit or challenge to the unlawful unconstitutional actions of the Trump administration in 3 states where there is a Republican AG but a Democratic governor, the Democratic governors have reached out to us to join our suits on behalf of the people of their state who they believe should have food and should have their rights honored and the funding appropriated. Governor Beshear in Kentucky, Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania, and Governor Kelly in Kansas.
Good to hear.
So we're grateful to have them join us. I do just want to say that, in my humble opinion, regardless of your political leanings, any American should be outraged by the ripping away of food from hungry Americans. And the Trump administration is doing this all by choice. Many of you know there was a posting by the USDA on the website indicating that they were going to pay the funds during the period of the government shutdown, and then they did a 180-degree turn and removed that from their website. So this is a choice. And where we are now is we have 2 court orders requiring the payment by the U.S. Department of Agriculture of the contingency fund.
Right.
The contingency fund has about $5 to $6 billion in it. The cost for all eligible Americans to receive SNAP benefits for the month of November is $8 billion. So it falls short of full payment. And the courts have asked the federal administration to come forward with a plan for how they're going to use the contingency funds, and even invited them to use additional funds to pay full benefits.
Which, by the way, as an appropriator, I can say that they have full transfer authority to be able to move funds from elsewhere like they have rightfully for the military.
Right. And they've moved some funds for WIC, and we believe they can fully fund SNAP. But they decided not to, and they decided to propose a formula that is very administratively burdensome, slow, and difficult to administer. So right now where we are is a proposal by the federal administration to make payments that, partial payments that could take weeks, in some states 4 to 6 weeks before the payments can be processed. So there's no sense of urgency. There's no understanding of the needs of Americans who are hungry to get their benefits now, yesterday, not in 4 to 6 weeks. The plaintiffs in the 2 cases are proposing alternatives, including full payment as an alternative and a cleaner partial payment approach that's easier, more easily administrated, like just a clean 50% calculation on the past month's benefits, which would not take 4 to 6 weeks and could be processed more quickly. So that's where we are, but there's ongoing court proceedings. We will continue to push for full payment and or quicker payment. But again, the Trump administration could have fixed this weeks ago. They can fix it today. They can make full payment now. It's their choice.
Thank you on behalf of the 32,000 food assistance recipients in my district who the president is making suffer unnecessarily. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll recognize myself now. Attorney General, thank you so much for your leadership in defending SNAP and so many other issues as well. You know, in California, we have over 5 million Californians who rely on what we call CalFresh, which are the SNAP benefits, including children and people with disabilities and seniors and veterans. I want to follow up to this question that not a single Republican Attorney General has joined the lawsuits. Is your lawsuit only going to benefit Democratic states or Republican states be impacted?
It's a really good question. There was a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision called the CASA decision, which was an aspect of the birthright citizenship lawsuit that came up to the U.S. Supreme Court on this issue of nationwide injunctions. And it basically made it harder to get a nationwide injunction and essentially said that you need to be a party to a lawsuit to get the relief that you seek. And Democratic attorneys general had been up to that point seeking, in appropriate cases, nationwide injunctions, and I believed that Republican AGs were secretly thrilled that Democratic AGs were getting nationwide injunctions. They didn't have to publicly defy their leader. They could continue to bend the knee and not challenge him, but also get the benefits that we were delivering for them through the Democratic AGs lawsuits. Now, you do have to be a party to the lawsuit to get the relief. I thought it was very possible that the judges in our SNAP lawsuit would have provided relief only to the states before them. I don't think it's wrong to provide relief to everyone. Everyone deserves SNAP benefits. But I don't necessarily think that was required by the law. The Republican AGs are going to get the benefits without having to go to court on this case. And again, I don't think that's wrong because all Americans deserve full SNAP benefits. But going forward, there will be times where if we're seeking funding or the defense of certain rights, where some courts will say only those before us, and it will only be the Democratic attorneys general will get the relief sought, and the Republican AGs will have to do a lot of explaining to their constituents as to why they are not upholding their oath, why they're allowing the Trump administration to violate the rights of their constituents and rip away funding that is essential for them.
Well, thank you. Know that House Democrats are fighting for all Americans to have access to food. As you mentioned, everybody should have that access. It should not be a issue that only impacts one party. It impacts all of us.
Absolutely.
I want to also ask, right now there's a government shutdown. government remains closed, court and agency staff are furloughed. What impact has the shutdown had on your litigation?
There have been some requests by the U.S. Department of Justice to pause our cases because of lack of resources. And when we have an order in place, a restraining order or a preliminary injunction or a permanent injunction where we are essentially blocking the unlawful action from occurring, we have agreed to allowing the case to be paused because we like the status quo. We're protecting our people and we're winning in the case. But if we have a pending request to the court where we are seeking an order to block unlawful conduct for the Trump administration, we are not agreeing to the pause, and we are demanding an order that identifies the unlawful action and has an order issued to prevent that unlawful action from harming the people in our states. So there have been some requests from the U.S. DOJ indicating that they have a shortage of resources, and sometimes we agree when appropriate for the American people, and sometimes we don't.
It seems to me that the administration, the president, needs to be held accountable even if there is a shutdown. And so this litigation should resume, especially in this scenario. Thank you so much, Attorney General. And now I will recognize Representative Horsford for questions.
Thank you to Co-Chair Barragan and to Co-Chair Wasserman Schultz and for our entire Steering and Policy Committee. I'm losing my voice because we had a telephone town hall with over 11,000 people on it last night asking a lot of questions about SNAP and their health care. All across this country, the cost of living is crushing working families. Grocery prices are breaking budgets, rent keeps climbing, and now skyrocketing healthcare costs are set to push people past their limits. At a recent roundtable, one senior told me, 1 minute the court says the president has to release the funds, but then he says his administration will only release 50%. Then we hear the state is stepping in. Do you see why many of us are so panicked? President Trump is giving people an ultimatum. Choose between food, rent, or their health. But instead of stepping up and working across the aisle to support the American people, congressional Republicans are bent on gutting SNAP and the Affordable Care Act. I'm going to call this what it is. It's a shakedown of the working class. The very programs that lift working families up are being gutted at the same time that community-based resources like food banks are being stretched to their breaking points. We should be focused on affordability, on making SNAP stronger, on making health care within reach, and ensuring that every worker earns a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. Many of the people that are on SNAP are working people, but they're not being given a livable wage. And I call on those companies to do their part and raise the wage of these workers. But to Speaker Johnson, my message to you is to bring the House back into session. Bring your conference back to the table. It is time to govern. It is time for serious, grown-up conversations about how we reopen this government in a bipartisan way, how we lower costs, and how we get this country moving again. Working families shouldn't have to be forced to give up food or medicine or housing just to stay afloat while you give $40 billion to Argentina. AG Bonta, I want to thank you for your work to hold this administration accountable. You said you've had to sue them 46 times in 46 weeks. You and 23 other attorneys general, including my own, Attorney General Aaron Ford from Nevada, successfully intervened to hold the Trump administration accountable and to secure these SNAP benefits for 42 million people, including 500,000 in Nevada. However, following your lawsuit and a similar one in Rhode Island, President Trump posted on Truth Social that SNAP benefits will, quote, only be given when the radical left Democrats open the government, unquote. Later, the White House press secretary walked those comments back, saying partial SNAP benefits would still be issued for this month. What is your reaction to this president's remarks and really lawlessness against the courts and their order?
It's outrageous, it's disgusting, it's despicable, and it's unlawful. And he may be okay starving hungry Americans, treating them as political pawns in his very dangerous game, but the law does not allow for it. We will not stand for it as Democratic AGs, and the court order prevents what he is saying. He is required, and they are paying the contingency fund component. So, and it's confusing and scary and irresponsible for him to post like this. And his press secretary walked this statement back later and said the contingency funds would actually be paid against the desire and the will of the president to starve hungry Americans. But it shows where his head is and where his heart is or where it's not. And that's why we've had to sue the president 46 times in 41 weeks, because he goes off on rants like this. He has contempt for the law. He is untethered from the facts. And he continues to break the law. And so we need to rein him in. And we will continue to do that. And this is another example.
Thank you. If I could just briefly, Ms. Gooden-Stewart, thank you for your attendance, for your lived experience, and for sharing that and the strength that you represent on behalf of so many millions of Americans. How are the further cuts to SNAP and WIC and Medicaid straining the limited resources that you and other families are struggling with right now?
Well, myself and the families I serve in my community, with everything just being limited, resources, help, nonprofits like the Baby Stewart Foundation, it's been hard already. Families have to making the awful decision to, buy 2 weeks worth of diapers, or do I take the little money that I have and go buy groceries? So these are some of the decisions they're making. And with everything going on with the government shutdown, it's not going to lead to better living conditions. It's almost as if, these people have nowhere to turn. The families have nowhere to turn. And it may cause issues like what you said with the food banks and everything. The food banks in Galveston County are asking for donations. They see what's going on. It's elderly people hungry, disabled vets, and with these limited resources and funding low, it's extremely hard for everyone. So just having the sense of community and having to pull the little resources that we have to help people is what we are aiming to do right now.
Thank you so much for that testimony. Next, we have Representative Thompson. I recognize you for your time.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Policy and Steering Committee and all the members who are here today, and to all the witnesses who've just done an outstanding job sharing your very compelling stories. And a special thanks to my Attorney General. General, thanks for being here. You've been on the tip of the spear, as it's been pointed out, on every major issue where this administration is trying to hurt the people of our state of California and people across the country. Thank you for that. Thank you. Well, welcome to day 37 of the federal government shutdown, the longest running shutdown in our history, beating the last record set under this president during his first term in office. Well, I don't see that as winning. It's a monumental failure of the House majority, and it continues to be prolonged because of this president. The same president who, when there was a shutdown under a Democratic president, said it's the president's fault if the government is shut down. Bottom line, Speaker Johnson sent a continuing resolution to the Senate that doesn't have the votes to pass. So it's simple. Speaker Johnson, bring your Republican members back from vacation and work with Democrats to draft a bill that will pass and will fund and open the government. Too much is at stake to continue to have your members out on vacation. People are losing their health care. And make no mistake, nobody in America should not be able to have health care, nor should anyone be forced into bankruptcy trying to pay their medical bills. People are losing their food security, the majority of which are working people, kids, seniors, and the disabled. And make no mistake, nobody in the richest country in the world, a country that, by the way, feeds the rest of the world, should go hungry. Federal workers are working without pay, they've been laid off, or they're furloughed. That just should not happen. Mr. Speaker, you're guilty of public policy malpractice. You have a responsibility to work for the American people, all of the American people, not work against them. Convene the House so we can open the government and address the issues important to the people that we represent. And in addition to the things that we're talking about, which are extremely important, there are a ton of other issues we should be here working on. Telehealth has expired. There's no farm bill. Flood insurance has expired. Appropriation bills haven't been passed. The FAA flight safety legislation has not been passed. If for no other reason, bring us back so we can join Marjorie Taylor Greene in reading the names of the people who are on the Epstein files. There's a ton of things we could be doing. So bring your members back. Let's work together to address the issues that the American people sent us to Washington to work on. General Bonta, you mentioned that in your lawsuits that there's maybe some question as to whether or not all states would benefit from this. But the fact of the matter is, if it just affects people in California or the other states where attorney generals have joined you, we're talking about all the people. I mean, this isn't just helping Democrats in one state or another. Isn't this helping all people? Aren't Republicans who are disabled, Republicans who are working for substandard wages, kids who are going to school and to bed hungry, won't they benefit too?
100%, Congressmember Thompson. When we bring our lawsuits and we secure relief, if the court issues an order that applies to the 23 Democratic Attorney General states, everyone in those states benefit, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of party. Every child, every senior, every disabled person, every veteran, whoever is eligible for the relief gets that relief. So thank you for that clarification.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize Representative Takano.
I work two jobs, so I manage a restaurant and I also do HVAC part-time.
So you have two part-time jobs. And
Yes.
You get your health insurance from the Maryland Exchange.
Yes, I do.
And you currently have a gold plan.
I have a silver plan, and it costs me under $70 a month.
A silver plan, and
Yeah.
the tax credits, the enhanced premium tax credits, help you afford that
yes.
policy.
Yeah. Without them, it would be like around $400 a month.
Have you been able to check what the premiums cost now? Are those available on the website?
I think it'll be around 200. Maryland has, for another year, they're going to foot a little bit more of the bill. So we're lucky in Maryland that we have that, but it is still going up, yeah.
It's still going up.
Yes.
So, Maryland has mitigated
Yes.
the cost
A tiny bit, yes.
for you at this point.
Yep, for another year. Yes.
Another year, but in a year you're going to be facing, as your testimony said,
Yeah, it'll be very
astronomical
expensive.
costs.
Yeah, or I'll have to downgrade to a bronze plan that will have a very high deductible.
Downgrade to a bronze
Yes.
plan.
Yeah, or get rid of it. Yeah, we'll see.
And Ms. Bogacki, where are you? What state are you from again? If you could remind me.
I'm from Pennsylvania.
From Pennsylvania, and you also buy your health insurance through the Pennsylvania Exchange.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Can you? And you said that you're facing the possibility of an $8,000 deductible for your family, to cover your family. Did I hear that right?
It's almost 17,000 for the family.
17,000 for the
Yes.
family.
8,000 for each individual.
Each individual.
Yes.
So the way that works is each individual has to meet that deductible.
The 8,000 something, yeah.
That's just impossible.
Yes.
And then that's impossible. Yes. So when you said, what struck me in your testimony is you said that you essentially are going to a catastrophic plan.
Yes.
Which doesn't really help you pay for the everyday things. If you have chronic disease or you have to manage all these other illnesses, an accident happens, out of pocket, you're going to spend up to $18,000 for your family.
Yeah.
But of course, you need the insurance because if someone gets
something
cancer
might
or something like that, you're facing hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Exactly.
I find it hard to believe that this Congress, the Republican leadership and this president are indifferent to your plight, indifferent to the plight of the 22 million Americans that depend on the tax credits and the several million more that are going to see premiums increase. That's just heartbreaking for me, and I want you to know that I stand shoulder to shoulder with my colleagues so that we can protect health care and lower these costs. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here, all of you. I yield.
Thank you for those questions. And I know one of our witnesses needs to depart. I want to thank you all for being here. Mr. Bonta, if you have to depart, that's okay. We appreciate your being here. I will now recognize Representative Scanlon.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing us together while House Republicans and President Trump continue to be AWOL on solving the health care and affordability challenges that Americans, including those here today with us, are facing every day. Last week, for the first time ever, SNAP benefits lapsed. In the 60 years since SNAP was created, through recessions, natural disasters, prior shutdowns, the federal government has never missed a SNAP payment until now. And why? It was a choice by this White House. It was a choice to defund SNAP because Congress has already authorized billions of dollars in emergency money to fund SNAP, including during government shutdowns. After states were forced to sue the federal government, 2 federal courts have ordered the White House to release the SNAP funds. But instead of following the law and feeding hungry families, this administration initially refused to release the SNAP money and continues to refuse to seek alternative sources of funding, which again is a choice. It's a choice to delay the fraction of benefits that the White House is releasing. It's a choice to tell states that they will not be reimbursed if they step in to fill that gap and feed families. It is a choice to create a bureaucratic nightmare for states that are scrambling to get those SNAP payments out the door and into families' pockets now that the White House is forced to pay out some of them. And as A.G. Bonta mentioned, the Pennsylvania Secretary of Human Services has sent a letter to the White House talking about the bureaucratic nightmare that has been created. It's also a choice to forbid food retailers and community partners from offering discounts to SNAP participants, punishing the small businesses that are trying to help their neighbors in trouble. But that happened this week, too. And we can't forget that 12% of all grocery purchases in the U.S. are made with SNAP dollars. So it's hurting grocers, too. President Trump knows all this. He maintained SNAP benefits during the second longest shutdown in U.S. history, which, not coincidentally, was during his first administration. No White House, Democrat or Republican, has ever blocked SNAP payments and let millions of kids go hungry until now. 42 million Americans rely on SNAP to put food on the table, almost 90,000 in my district. And the human cost of these choices are staggering. In my district, Anna and her husband work long hours at multiple jobs to make ends meet, but they still need SNAP to feed their family of 5 and afford basic necessities.
Anna doesn't know what they're going to do because they didn't get their November benefits. Tawny, in my district, is a recently retired veteran. Her Social Security check barely covers her rent and basic utilities. She will go hungry without that November SNAP payment. And we're talking about a paltry $6 a day per person. We know that depriving kids of food, even for short periods of time, harms their mental and physical development, but we can fix it. The president can act. The funds are available. As the courts have suggested, he can transfer other funds to fully fund SNAP payments now, as he and other presidents have done in the past. Personally, I would suggest that he start with the billions he's sending to prop up hedge funds in Argentina, or maybe sell some of the gold trinkets and plumbing he's surrounded himself with in the White House, so that hungry kids can eat. Congressional Republicans can act too. They need to come back to D.C. and work with Democrats to pass a budget that works. Congressional Republicans need to have the spine and the political will to put their constituents first. A.G. Bonta, you mentioned that the USDA has created an administrative nightmare. Our Secretary of Human Services said that this is going to delay the availability of food assistance to 2 million Pennsylvanians. Can you comment on that?
Let me just first reaffirm and reemphasize your point that this is all a choice. This is deliberate, this is intentional, this is cruel by design to not make payments and to only make partial payments and to delay payments. It required the administration to break the law, to depart from all historical precedent, and to even contradict their own statements that they were going to make payments that they posted on a website a month ago. So this is deliberate. They really had to reach and try to get here. They can make payments easier. They're proposing the most painful, slow, burdensome administrative approach. And the fastest way and the most efficient way to make payments is to make full payments. It's easy. It's simple. It can happen immediately, and it could provide food for everyone who needs it. The second best would be to have some clean percentage application, maybe 50% if they're going to do partial payments, which I don't agree with, but if they're going to do it, at least make it fast instead of making it partial and slow. So they could, 50% across the board, a percentage would be much more administratively appropriate and digestible and able to implement. So there are alternatives. They know they're there. They're avoiding them, again, to your point, by choice.
Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you. And now we have been joined, and it's my honor to introduce our Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries.
Good morning. Thank you, Nanette, for that introduction, for your leadership as Steering and Policy Co-Chair. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with all of my colleagues and certainly, of course, all of you for today's hearing, the 16th in our series of Steering and Policy Committee engagements designed to make sure that the American people can speak directly to the Congress and to the nation about the challenges that you all are facing in your day-to-day lives. I'm grateful, of course, to the leadership team, members from the House Democratic Caucus, and, of course, to our witnesses for your presence here today. Thank you, Attorney General Bonta, for your incredible leadership on this issue and on many issues on behalf of the state of California and the country. To Lisa, to Ashley, to Bobby, thank you for being here, for the work that you do in your communities, and for speaking out against the extremism and the harm being caused by this administration. This is day 37 of the Trump Republican shutdown, the longest in our nation's history. And the American people continue to be hurt by the chaos, the confusion, the cruelty that Donald Trump and Republicans are inflicting on our nation. For the first time ever, SNAP benefits are not being sent out, even after the administration was ordered to do so by 2 different federal courts. Donald Trump and his administration are also threatening to withhold back pay for hundreds of thousands of federal workers who have been furloughed or working without pay for the last several weeks in violation of a law that Donald Trump himself signed in 2019. And because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, tens of millions of Americans who are now in the open enrollment period are experiencing dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles that could bankrupt them or deprive them of the ability to see a doctor when they need one. In some cases, of course, we know those premiums could increase by $1,000 or $2,000 per month. It's unacceptable in the United States of America. The incompetence and the cruelty on display by this administration and by Republicans in the House and the Senate is staggering. Now is a time when we need willing partners on the other side of the aisle, but they've been missing in action. House Republicans, in fact, have canceled votes for 6 consecutive weeks. They are on a taxpayer-funded vacation and refuse to do their job. Senate Republicans, at the same time, have been engaged in legislative insanity, bringing the same failed partisan Republican spending bill to the floor 15 or so times, knowing the same result was going to happen, it would fail. And Donald Trump, of course, is throwing parties for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected, destroying half of the White House, and somehow can find $40 billion to bail out a right-wing wannabe dictator in Argentina, but can't find a dime to prevent health care costs from skyrocketing or to stop seniors, children, veterans, and disabled Americans from going hungry. Is that what America First looks like? It's outrageous, and the American people have clearly had enough. So whether in the Congress, in the courts, or in the community, it's important for all of us, and House Democrats will continue to fight for a bipartisan spending agreement that improves the health, the safety, and the economic well-being of the American people, to end this reckless and unprecedented Trump Republican government shutdown, and to make sure that we decisively address the health care crisis that Republicans are visiting on the American people. That's our promise to you, and I'm so thankful for our Attorney General and for all of our powerful witnesses who have joined us today.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Appreciate your leadership and hosting this important hearing today to share a spotlight on the impacts that this Republican shutdown is having on the American people. And now I turn to Representative Ross for your questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you so much to the witnesses for coming to Washington to share your experiences and your fights. In Wake County, North Carolina, which I represent, more than 83,000 of my neighbors rely on SNAP to put food on the table. And statewide, it's 1.42 million North Carolinians. 4 in 5 participating families include a child, a senior, or an adult with a disability. Roughly 80% of SNAP households include someone who's working. And more than 46,000 North Carolina veterans need SNAP. And it is just inhumane that right ahead of Veterans Day, this president isn't honoring their service. Republicans in the federal government, the state legislature, and along with this president and his cronies, and I'm talking about my state legislature because they're no help, have undertaken every effort to make it harder for these families and all families to put food on the table, beginning with the big, ugly law, which cut $186 billion in food assistance. This was way before the shutdown this crisis started. The big, ugly law also shifts the cost of food assistance programs down to the states and our local governments. And Republican legislators, like the ones in North Carolina, have refused to take up food assistance. They're not covering the gap. In fact, we don't even have a state budget. And if we did, it would have cut more food assistance from people. This is cruelty at its worst. In Raleigh and across the Triangle, food pantries are sounding the alarm. They have had shortages. Now, this week, they've gotten a lot of donations because of all the news about SNAP. Sometimes too many donations. Sometimes they can't handle all of that. But that's not going to last. They have been bracing for reduced and delayed benefits for months. The Interfaith Food Shuttle in Raleigh has been serving residents in need for over 35 years. And during my recent visit, they told me that their stocks have been strained since January of this year when Trump took office. They also warned that this reduction in SNAP assistance will lead to rationing, which it already has, longer lines around the block, and turning down those in need. At the exact time when more working families are showing up for help. And let's be clear, this administration is creating more people who are out of jobs. In my area, DOGE cuts have affected people at the EPA, federal workers using food banks for the first time, federal contractors who do medical research using food banks for the first time. It is despicable that our attorneys general have had to sue this president multiple times, most recently for food assistance, but they also had to sue to get basic education funding, and so many more times, as we've heard from Attorney General Bonta. It is time that we come back to work. President Trump is not the Speaker of the House, even though he believes he is. We need to come back to work. We need to take control over this body and do the right thing by our people. It is beyond time. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize Representative Bonamici.
To the Steering and Policy Committee for holding this important hearing and for continuing to do the vital work on behalf of the American people while the Republicans stay home on vacation. Thank you so much to the witnesses. I know Attorney General Bonta had to leave, but I just want to thank him for the work partnering with my Attorney General in Oregon, Dan Rayfield, on so many important issues. It is unacceptable that in the United States of America, millions of people across the country are at risk of losing their health care and going hungry. 42 million people, including 16 million children, rely on SNAP. About 750,000 people in Oregon, and about 210,000 of those people are kids. We know it's highly damaging for children to go without food. It harms their ability to learn. A lack of key nutrients during early childhood may result in lifelong learning deficits. So I serve on the Education Committee. I got a gift on Tuesday from some children in Oregon. This is from Dietrich in Hillsboro. This one is from Ryan in Portland. They are drawing pictures of the food they might lose without SNAP benefits. This one is, that was Ryan. This one, look at this one, that doesn't have a name. This is from Paul in Hillsboro. They are drawing pictures of the food that they won't get. Ezra in Hillsboro drew this one. He has some broccoli on there. And I just want to say that these kids, look at the lesson that these kids are getting, that they might lose their meals because of the mean government that is withholding SNAP benefits. I also want to note on Tuesday that the same day I got these pictures from hungry children, the president issued this chaotic statement saying that he will only pay SNAP benefits when the government reopens, which is, of course, contradicting the USDA's announcement and in defiance of court orders. That chaos is harming our community. It's very cruel of the President of the United States and House Republicans to deny 42 million people food. And it is extremely cruel that this is happening using children, hungry children and families as political pawns. I don't think Donald Trump has ever struggled to put food on the table, but I have. I worked my way through community college, and law school on my own. And without food stamps, I would not have had enough to eat. I do want to note that the administration say they can't find a way to feed hungry children, but they can find a way to renovate the Lincoln bathroom at the White House. And last week, the night before SNAP benefits were cut off, President Trump hosted a Great Gatsby-themed party at Mar-a-Lago. So here's a quote from the Great Gatsby. They were careless people. They smashed up things and creatures, and then they retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness and let other people clean up the mess they had made. Well, this president and MAGA Republicans have created a mess. They should care about the well-being of everyone in this country, not just the wealthy elite. I know that food banks, state and local governments, places of worship, community organizations, they're stepping up in Portland, where district I represent. We have Laughing Planet Cafe and Heretic Coffee, that they're stepping up and helping people with food. And I tell you, that's amazing, supporting community, but it's not enough to fill the gaps. Republicans need to get back to Washington, D.C. They need to work with us to open the government in a way that does not inflict more harm on the American people. And in the meantime, this administration must immediately distribute that funding. And I just want to ask quickly, Ms. Gooden Stewart, you work with families and children a lot, I know. What does it mean to children if they don't have enough to eat? What does that do to them and their future?
When children don't get enough to eat, it damages their self-esteem, their mental health and well-being, and it also causes disruption in the classrooms.
Thank you very much. And I yield back just with the hopes the Republicans get back here and end this shutdown. Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize Representative McCollum.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I want to thank the witnesses here today for sharing their stories. You know, I've heard from thousands of my constituents. They've reached out about the slashing of $1 trillion from Medicaid. In my district alone, there'll be 19,000 people who are expected to lose their Medicaid coverage. And as I said, people have been reaching out to me. I had a constituent that reached out to our office, and she told me she logged on to review her plan options and found her payments are going to go from $204 a month to $614 a month. In Minnesota, actually, does some reinsurance. Without what the state contributed, it would have even been higher than that. But that's a difference to her of $4,920 a year with a higher deductible. So what are people deciding to do? They're telling me that they're going to forego health care, maybe forego a dental plan. Maybe they'll delay seeing a doctor because of a copay until it's absolutely necessary, because they just can't afford to do anything else. So I know we're hearing those stories all over, and I thank you for sharing what you're hearing in what you do. Now, make no mistake, thousands of Americans are going to lose their health insurance, and they're not going to seek medical care, and they're going to be in emergency wards, which is more expensive and worse for them. But then there's SNAP. 40,000 Minnesotans who rely on SNAP are going to lose their ability to buy nutritious groceries. And then I'm going to add one more thing to the mix. I'm going to add heating assistance. It's called LIHEAP. It's getting cold in Minnesota. In Project 2025, LIHEAP was eliminated. In the president's budget, it was eliminated. The administration on April 2025 fired the entire staff responsible for the program, and that has halted reimbursements to the states. 130,000 Minnesotans use LIHEAP to heat and cool their homes. And we know many of these folks, they depend on all three programs just to survive. So my question is to Ms. Golden Stewart. You're here representing nonprofits, and the nonprofits in Minnesota administer a lot of these programs, and they're involved in it from food shelves to LIHEAP to helping navigate. Please let us know the strain that this is putting on nonprofits, hearing the stories, and then knowing you can't do anything to help many of these people.
Being able to help families in need, individuals in need, has been a huge strain in the nonprofit sector. You hear stories, you hear testimonies all the time. You get phone calls in the middle of the night of people needing diaper need, food assistance, utility. And it breaks my heart, honestly, to tell a family that the other partnering nonprofit organizations don't have the funding at the time. Resources are limited, and it doesn't solve their issue. You know, they need the help. They reach out to churches, they reach out to nonprofits, and it's nothing that we can do at the time. And it's really hard telling a family no. It's hard not having the grant funding and the necessary means to help families.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Food, clothing, shelter, and heat are all necessities. And this administration, through this shutdown, is denying our families all of them. I thank you all for testifying, and to all the nonprofits out there, we love you.
Thank you, Congresswoman McCollum. Next is Congresswoman Kelly Morrison from the great state of Minnesota.
Madam Chair, thank you to the Steering and Policy Committee for bringing us together, and thanks so much to this esteemed panel for being here and sharing your stories. Talking about just how dire the circumstances of this Republican shutdown are. It's now the 37th day of Republicans holding the government hostage and refusing to hear the overwhelming majority of Americans asking them to protect their care and food. I have the honor of representing the people of Minnesota's 3rd District, and as we dive deeper into how these crises are compounding harm to our communities, we can draw no other conclusion that the cruelty is the point. We've now seen Trump and congressional Republicans go beyond ignoring patients, advocates, experts, physicians, and caregivers to the president threatening access to food for millions of Americans, children, seniors, and veterans going hungry while House Republicans enjoy their 7th week off. The American people have been abundantly clear. They want their representatives to address the rising cost of health care, stop grocery prices from increasing, and deliver stability and affordability. But congressional Republicans and the Trump administration have refused to show up to address these crises. In fact, earlier this year, they united to implement a direct contradiction of what the American people asked of them. Their most significant accomplishment thus far was to make the single largest cut to health care and food assistance in our nation's history. They've tried multiple excuses and rebrands and smokescreens in a desperate attempt to conceal the reality of their so-called one big beautiful bill. Now they are once again uniting to undermine affordability by refusing to extend ACA tax credits that help families, small business owners, farmers, and caregivers afford their health care. In brief, Trump is threatening to withhold SNAP funds in order to skyrocket premiums for American families just a couple of months after his signature bill cut billions from Medicaid and SNAP. It is beyond cruel, and it's an outright betrayal of the American people. As an OBGYN physician myself who had the privilege of caring for patients for more than 20 years, I find these combined attacks on healthcare and food access that will have severe consequences for the long-term health of the American people absolutely horrifying. So, Ms. Gooden Stewart, I want to start by thanking you both as an OBGYN and as a mother myself for the important work and advocacy that you do in your community. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the changes you've seen in the day-to-day realities of families in your community since Trump and congressional Republicans' cuts to health care and food assistance have begun?
Of the families that I serve in Galveston County are hardworking families. So due to the changes, not being able to have the necessary access to SNAP, families are either taking on more additional hours at work to be able to afford food and just the basic necessities, and which is taking them away from the home. So that's been a very critical part. Or families are having to take a day off work just to go to the food bank or to go to some of the organizations that still have funding and means at this time for additional assistance.
Taking parents away from their children is an aspect that we haven't talked about as much, so thank you for highlighting that. And then just briefly, in your experience, what are the long-term community impacts when kids grow up without access to the food and health care that they need?
The long-term effects to children not receiving food, it's damaging. It does cause a lot of issues with mental health, a lot of trust issues or mistrust. It takes a dig at their self-esteem and their confidence, and it also puts them in survival mode. Just being in crisis or trauma that they're too young to process can develop issues later on.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman Morrison. Next, I'll recognize Congressman Sean Casten from Illinois.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming today. I think one of the hard things about being a legislator and writing laws is that we write laws that affect hundreds of millions of Americans. We tend to talk in statistics, and we think in statistics. I think about the 1.9 million people in Illinois who depend on SNAP. But then I think we're also, we always have this specter hanging over us of Joseph Stalin, who said one death is a tragedy and a million is a statistic. And I would never have thought I would be at a point where to understand how the President of the United States thinks, to understand how the Speaker of the House thinks, you have to read Joseph Stalin. And I'm not saying that to be, who else as a political leader has intentionally chosen to starve their own people to achieve political ends? Mao? Stalin? It sure as hell ain't the people who star in the book that Mike Johnson said, if you want to know what I think, just read the Bible. And yet that's where we are. And what I appreciate about this hearing and all you coming in is that you are giving the American people the ability to understand those individual tragedies. I guess, Ms. Gooden Stewart, I'd start with you. We're talking about the reality that this White House, under pressure, has maybe agreed to provide half of the SNAP benefits that they are legally obligated to provide. But even that, because they delayed, is going to be a 2-4 week delay depending on the state. So can you just help us out with, maybe some of the individual stories of the folks you represent? How much does a full SNAP benefit give them security? And how long can they afford to wait if that money is held up, even if they get it all back? Are these families that can afford to wait 2-4 weeks? Are they sitting on a lot of cash? What does that mean practically for these folks?
Even the delay in the SNAP benefit, it still puts the families that I serve, it holds them back. They rely on SNAP benefits to, make ends meet for the month. Because we're not talking about when the SNAP benefits run out. It doesn't keep them 100% secure, but it's better than nothing at all. And so basically, you're saying that these families, the children are going to go to school hungry and only be able to rely on the support of the school, the breakfast, snack time, if some schools are able to even afford that, and lunchtime. That's what they're relying on. The food banks, like I said, in my area, they need help. They need donations. They're doing the best that they can. The needs are growing rapidly.
And those food banks are for the people who typically, don't qualify for SNAP, right?
Well, it's different in our area because even if you qualify for SNAP or WIC or whatever the benefit is, you can still receive that additional support.
Yeah.
But when it's not there, then what are families going to do? They don't have an emergency fund. They don't have anything to pull out of when they run out of food or run out of SNAP or even delayed these things. Most of these families don't have the villages that they once had back in the day when community would come together. They would cook together. They would, barter that doesn't exist. And when we're in a small town of Lamarck, Texas, population of 14,000, it's hard to even access food on a normal day, healthy options on a normal day. So it's just, like I said, it's a total loss to these families. And they honestly, when I speak to them, feel like they don't have a way out. It's a lot of uncertainty.
Well, thank you for showing the morality and the ethics that seems to be absent in the White House and the Speaker's office, and I just hope they follow from your example. Yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Caston. Next, I recognize Congresswoman Sarah McBride from Delaware.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you so much to you and the other chairs of steering and policy for bringing us together for this conversation. And most importantly, thank you so much to our witnesses who have shared their stories and their experiences with us here today. You shouldn't have to be here, but you have to be here because Republicans are not here, and because millions of Americans are experiencing affordability crisis that needs to be urgently addressed. We are here today because when the government shuts down, it's not just Washington that suffers, it's our neighbors. In every single one of our districts across this country, in our districts and in our Republican colleagues' districts. And I'm here today because I want to join you all who have so powerfully shared your experiences and your perspectives to lift up just some of the voices of the more than 100,000 Delawareans who rely on SNAP for food assistance and the 50,000 Delawareans who rely on the Affordable Care Act tax credits for health coverage. If it weren't for the courts, Donald Trump would have chosen to withhold life-saving food assistance that millions of families rely on just to get by. Despite a court order forcing the administration to release food assistance funding, this administration is still playing politics with the livelihoods of millions of Americans, resulting in partial payments and delays in food assistance that our constituents can't afford to experience. It may continue to refuse to act to make health insurance affordable for people who are playing by the rules. As I mentioned, every week I hear from Delawareans who are paying the price for these political games. I think of a 68-year-old grandmother in Milford, Delaware, who's raising 2 grandsons on a fixed income. She worked at the chicken plant her whole life, and now she's praying because she can't afford rent when her lease renews in January. A young mom from Georgetown living with a seizure disorder told the food pantry she gets $298 a month in SNAP to feed her 2 small kids. That's less than $75 a week to put food on the table for a family of 3. A mom from Harrington who works as a caregiver came in with her 6-week-old baby and her teenage daughter. She said she's visiting the food pantry for the 2nd time this month because grocery prices have outpaced her paycheck. She is doing everything right, but she's falling behind. And a 25-year-old pregnant mom from Laurel was forced to stop working at the chicken plant at 38 weeks of pregnancy because her doctor told her she had to. She doesn't know how she'll be able to afford diapers once her new baby arrives. These Delaware stories aren't isolated. They're what happens when leaders in Washington choose politics over people. Let's be clear, Donald Trump and congressional Republicans could find the money to fully fund SNAP and feed 42 million Americans, including 16 million children, 8 million seniors, and 1.2 million veterans. But they are choosing not to. At the same time, they're allowing the Affordable Care Act tax credits to expire, credits that have helped, as I mentioned, nearly 50,000 Delawareans afford health insurance. As of this week, families from Seaford to Newark have seen their premiums double and triple overnight. Government should treat people with respect. That means feeding the hungry, keeping the lights on, and honoring the dignity of work and family. I think often about a quote from my dad. I don't usually quote my dad, but he has, I know it's a politician favorite, but he said to me once, if everyone shows just a little bit of courage, then no one has to be a hero. This moment demands courage, just a little bit of courage from our Republican colleagues to stand up to Donald Trump, to stand up for their constituents, to show up, just like you all have done today, so that they can join us in governing, feeding the hungry, and providing care for the sick. Delawareans, our constituents, are showing up for one another every single day, and it's time that the government does the same. Thank you all very much. I yield back.
Well said, Congresswoman McBride. Thank you so much. Next, my colleague and friend, all of these people are my friends, but, but yeah, exactly, especially so, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley from Massachusetts.
Madam Chair, I have the unenviable position of following my esteemed colleagues. So many of my questions have been asked and answered, and I've just been sitting here, sitting with all of this. You know, I work alongside people who speak with a mouth full of scriptures, but seem to carry a heart full of hate, and would have you believe that there is a deficit of resource when in fact there's just a deficit of empathy. They perpetuate stereotypes of struggle when we all know that struggle does not discriminate. It finds all of us. We're all just one disruptive life event away. Losing a spouse, losing a child, losing a job, having an illness. One disruptive life event away. Poverty and struggle are not moral failings. They are not character flaws. The flaws are that we have systems that are broken and lawmakers that do not see themselves in their neighbors. They don't see the humanity of their neighbors. So I thank you all so much for being here. I look forward to a day where you do not have to relive the hardest moments of your life in order to compel action from your government. This is, Coretta Scott King said, starving a child is violence. Contempt for the working man and woman is violence. This is violence. It's policy violence. It's policy negligence. This is not harm that is naturally occurring. It is man-made, manufactured. So I thank you all for being here, for turning your pain into purpose. And we will certainly amplify your stories in the hopes that our colleagues will have an epiphany, having heard about your lived experiences. Because I just don't think that they get it. I don't think they know what they're doing. And if they do, they must be more concerned with keeping a job than doing the one they were sent here to do for the people and communities that entrusted them. I just was wondering if any of you would be willing to speak to the stereotypes that continue to be perpetuated about who relies on SNAP, who are the Medicaid recipients, who benefits from the subsidies of the Affordable Care Act. If any of you would just be willing to speak to that and just head on to tackle these stereotypes. Yes.
Is it on? My light doesn't turn red. Is this on?
Yes.
I feel like I can speak to the stereotypes for who relies on the Affordable Care Act subsidies. I'm a person who's been a rule follower my whole life. I was that good girl who just did everything the way I was supposed to do it. And as you said, I'm sorry, it takes one event that took away more than half of our family income and left me with these 3 little children. Thank you. And we have lived through dealing with people, thankfully not my friends and families, but my young son in middle school said he had to point out to his friend that said people on Obamacare were just lazy and didn't want to work. And that friend of my 10-year-old son was talking about my son and didn't know it. So it's not, the stereotypes are not correct. I am, as Representative Dean said, I am not alone. I am not special. There are so many people who are doing everything the way it's supposed to be done, and yet still I've needed multiple of these social safety nets. My kids got the Social Security survivors benefits, and we needed, the Affordable Care Act help. And I'm a professional. I don't flip burgers, that term they like to always say. But it's still not enough. Our society is not set up for a solo parent. It's just not. And I think it's not wrong to say that government should look more into those situations because there are so many of us.
I'm very grateful for your candor. And again, I'm so sorry that you have to relive the hardest times in your life to compel action from the government to meet your most basic needs, which in my opinion are a human right. Food is a human right. Food is not just nourishment. It is health. It is medicine. It is dignity. It's readiness to learn. It's readiness to work. Health care is not a nice to have. It's a must have. Mm-hmm. So we're already over time, so I will defer to the chair to get us back on schedule. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Presley, and thank you, Lisa, for continuing to share your really searing story. Next, my colleague and neighbor and friend, Congressman Darren Soto from the great state of Florida.
Thank you, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz. I represent the district with the second most Obamacare enrollment in the nation. Many of you may be shocked to know that all top 10 Obamacare districts are in Florida, including my colleague here. It has helped vastly reduce our uninsured rate and helped with a lot of small business owners and independent contractors. It's been a smashing success in the Sunshine State. And so that's what this fight is all about. It's also about SNAP. Trump had discretion with both contingency funds and with other funds in the USDA to fully fund SNAP. The courts told him to do so, and he still chose not to do it. Callousness and cruelty. I think about my constituents right now who are suffering, and even as they are, and I've talked to many of them, they want us to soldier on to get a deal to help lower health insurance costs and also lower food costs. And I was just at Second Harvest, our local food bank, and volunteering and hearing their stories about how nonprofits are stepping up, but they can't fill the entire breach. We know that. And it's 6 weeks of House Republicans doing nothing. Meanwhile, Trump has started to build a billionaire ballroom, thrown decadent Great Gatsby parties, unfortunately in our state, the home of the largest Obamacare exchange in the nation, and a $2 billion corrupt cryptocurrency scheme. 36, now 37 days have passed. Where are the House Republicans? They're not here. They refuse to be here. They'd rather keep the government closed than negotiate lower health care costs and feed families. And that is a disgrace. And on election night, we saw loud and clear this week. People want us to work together to lower costs, and we're here to do that, and we will be ready when our Republican colleagues finally come around. Ms. Bogacki, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm also inspired by your story. I noticed you're a self-employed professional. We have a lot of those in Florida, as well as a lot of small business owners, independent contractors of all sorts. This is one of the reasons Obamacare has thrived. From a self-employed professional's point of view, why is Obamacare such a good fit to help folks get health care?
Thank you. I became a self-employed physical therapist when our children were very young. So I was subcontracted into working into the public school systems. And it just, like I said, we had been on my husband's employer plan, but I needed to keep that job when he passed because it allowed me the flexibility that these contractor positions have, and it was in a school system, so the summers were much less busy for work.
And did you have access? So you didn't have access to employer-based health care, is that correct?
No, I did not because it was I was contracted into the school. I was not a school employee.
Thank you so much. Mr. Laughlin, I want to talk a little bit about young people. We know, when I was a GW law student here in Washington, D.C., I didn't have health insurance, because it was before the ACA, right? And so the moment I graduated from college, here's my diploma, and there goes your health insurance. And I remember being insured for multiple years. And then I had major medical, which, unless you really, really are hurt, it really doesn't do much. How has the ACA been helpful for you as a young person to get insurance and to be able to make sure that you're covered?
To get a much better plan than I would otherwise have, and for a much cheaper price. So it's helped me greatly, and thankfully I'm healthy and I don't use it very often, but at the same time that keeps everyone's premiums low because when you have young people in the system, that allows there to be more money for everyone.
And every young person is one accident away or one
Yeah,
surprise health
yes.
issue
And-
away
Yeah.
from needing it. And so thank you for sharing your stories, and I yield back.
Thank you so much, Congressman Soto. And last but not least, but unsurprisingly because he is our most current junior member of the caucus, and I believe the House as well, Congressman James Walkinshaw from Virginia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hopefully for not much longer.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you all so much for being here. I just want to share a story that I heard from a constituent yesterday, Jack. And Jack is 25 years old, and he and his wife moved to Fairfax County, Virginia a few years ago, looking for economic opportunity. They got married, and they are expecting a baby boy at the end of this month, so they're very excited. And while they're joyfully preparing for that new arrival, as all expectant parents do, their budget is really tight. Grocery prices and the prices of other essentials have skyrocketed. Jack shared with me that he'll often have Campbell's soup for dinner so that they can afford the healthy food that his wife really needs during her pregnancy. They get their health care coverage through the ACA, and they're using the enhanced premium tax credits now. And this year, the monthly premiums for their family of 3 that they'll have soon is about $800 a month. And when they logged on to the exchange, they were shocked to see that next year their premiums will double to $1,600 a month. And that's $800 extra a month that they do not have. They don't have it. And so for Jack, he told me there wasn't really a choice. They've decided that he'll forgo health insurance next year so that his wife and their new baby will be covered. And this is not a choice that any family should have to make. But these are the choices that families across the Commonwealth of Virginia and across the country are facing. In my district in Northern Virginia, 19,000 people are about to see their health care costs skyrocket if Congress doesn't act to extend the enhanced premium tax credits. And as you all know, this is happening in rural areas as well, which will be hit a lot harder by Washington Republicans' refusal to cancel their health care cuts. And it is shameful. And that's why we're here today fighting to make sure that no family has to choose whether mom or dad will get their health insurance next year. And Republicans need to come back to Washington and join us at the table to negotiate and prevent these devastating health care cuts to give families like Jack's and millions of families across the country the peace of mind they deserve, that they'll be able to afford their health care coverage next year. And I wanted to just ask you, Ms. Gooden Stewart, in your work, in your experience, what is the impact on a family, the impact on children if one or more of their parents don't have health care coverage?
Impact on children if one of their parents, or maybe both parents, doesn't have the necessary health care or adequate health care, it could be detrimental to them because, like many of you all shared, we are all one accident or one unexpected event away from our life changing. So, not being able to have both parents at their most healthiest form, it can weigh heavy on a child mentally and physically. So yes, it's very critical to their well-being.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And as a parent, I know that I'm a much better father when I'm healthy, and I think that's true for all of us. So thank you all so much for joining us, and I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Walkinshaw. And I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here to share your stories and bring us the information about what is happening in your communities to the U.S. Congress. Every week when I fly home, I hear too many heartbreaking stories like the ones that we heard here. As A.G. Bonta said, there have been no lawsuits that have been brought by Republican attorneys general to fight against Trump's lawbreaking that is clearly hurting their constituents. Yet because of cowardice, shame, or laziness, maybe all three, we don't hear these same cries of impending crisis being made in bipartisan hearings in Congress. And it's day 37 of the Republican shutdown. For those who keep count, it's the 48th paid day off that Speaker Johnson has given to his GOP colleagues. But Democrats have been here throughout. We're ready to work and we're ready to negotiate a deal to reopen government and avoid the catastrophic health care crisis that we were just warned about again today. It must be noted, though, that much has changed since we last convened. Trump is literally stopping children, seniors, and veterans from having the kind of family homecoming meal that we all look forward to at Thanksgiving. He is literally taking food out of their mouths and having desperate parents, forcing desperate parents to wonder how they are going to give any food, any meal, never mind nutritious, to their children. As a mom, that's just incomprehensible to me to have to face that angst. And the USDA appears to have lied about how deep the cuts would be. Hollywood couldn't script a more heartless villain than this. But voters see this cruelty. They see it very clearly. Across America Tuesday, in blue, purple, and red states, they turned out in huge numbers to reject this brand of callous extremism. They marched into polling booths and they told elected leaders they want affordable health care, housing, utilities, and groceries. And that's why we're here right now, and we're going to keep showing up week after week to make sure that while the Republicans refuse to come to work, that the Democratic caucus, led by our leader Hakeem Jeffries, is going to continue to shine a white-hot spotlight on the plight of real people and the impact on them of these horrific Trump and Republican and MAGA-infused policies. While our House Republican colleagues enjoy a second month-long paid holiday, we're working on a way to help Lisa Boone Bagaki, who has, as she said, is a self-employed widow and mom of three. We've heard from her this morning, and who obviously desperately needs the ACA to raise her family, as she shared with us. But by their absence, Republicans make it clear that they don't care about her plight or the millions just like her who face the same grim financial fate. So we need to, and we will keep showing up, and we need to keep demanding that Republicans hear from her and Ashley Gooden Stewart and Bobby Laughlin. They aren't billionaires, which is why our colleagues on the other side of the aisle clearly don't care about them. But their families are worth every minute of our attention until we solve this deadly, costly, Republican-forced health care crisis. And the voters just told us they're going to fight back on this by our side as well. So thank you so much to all of you for continuing to demand that quality health care, housing, and food remain accessible to all of us and not just a few. And with that, this hearing is adjourned.